Another video, this time about Soul Calibur. This is just a video talking about kind of my issues with the game, I suppose. I love watching Soul Calibur a lot. It's probably my favorite game to watch right now. I think I've seen every single tournament that's come out since its release. I especially like watching NLBC because I love Ramon and Enders. They crack me up. I wish they were commentating everything for Soul Calibur because they're great. There's a lot of good commentators actually for Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur's got a nice community. I appreciate watching it. It's one of the main reasons I think that I'm so interested in Soul Calibur is I just like the community. It's just a damn shame that I couldn't click with the game as much as I wanted to. So just to preface everything, I am a 2D player 100%. Soul Calibur 6 is my first attempt to learn a 3D fighter in any capacity. And I eventually reached a point where I said, fuck it, and I took a break, and I've only recently come back to playing it a little bit. And it's still fun. It has issues, I have issues with it, but Soul Calibur 6 I think has a very fun foundation with a bunch of crap stacked on top of it. Contrast that to like Street Fighter 5, which I think has a shoddy foundation with a bunch of shit stacked on top of it. This game is fun at its core. Its foundation is a little wonky. It's got some weird hitboxes and stuff like that. But the foundation is fun. The pace is fun. The game is fun. There's just some things about it that irk me. So I think one of the first things I'll start with, and this is more of like a me coming at this from a 2D player perspective. This game, and this is true for every fighting game, but this game has a lot of rules that it teaches you and then continuously breaks. The amount of verticals in this game that aren't steppable or track for reasons that I'm not sure as to why. Like this move from Talon, which is not a good move, by the way. Why does this track? I don't know why it tracks. It just does. I think there's a very specific frame you can step this. But I don't know why that tracks. Certain moves having really wide hitboxes is bizarre. This game teaches you step verticals, duck highs, jump lows. But as anyone who's watched any tournament of this game can attest, you're just going to have these weird situations where you're going to crouch and get hit by a high, you're gonna jump over a low and still get hit, you're gonna step a vertical and get clipped. Weird shit happens at all times. And in a game with this pace and freedom of movement, you kind of expect that to a degree. So I'm willing to accept that to an extent. There are definitely a lot of instances of moves where I just don't get why it has such a huge hitbox. Or why it tracks or anything like that. The amount of moves I try and step in this game that I get clipped by it, I'm just like, I don't know why. You taught me to step, game. I understand the desire to have tracking verticals because it's cool to have a tracking launcher. Like, that's neat. And, you know, you can't really do that many launchers that aren't just grounded like this with horizontals. And stuns are neat and all, but it's a different kind of juggle state, and I get it. But that's like my first issue, is just really weird. There's a lot of weird arbitrary rules. But for the most part, good, thank you, Soul Calibur 3 soundtrack. Good, thanks for the segue. That's just the foundational things that I have an issue with. I don't know if I want to talk about this now, but I guess I will briefly touch on it. I'm not going to go too in depth on this, but I will say, this game's a little boring to learn. I think Soul Calibur 6 and Soul Calibur in general is the easiest fighting game I've ever had to pick up. It's so easy to learn and just pick up the very basics of the game. Like, the skill floor is so high in this game that you can immediately start playing against good players and at least carrying yourself to a degree very, very quickly, which I appreciate. But in learning, like, getting good at this game, I found was something that I really could only do in labbing. I've since gotten a little better at doing this, and this is, I'm sure for Soul Calibur veterans this isn't the case as much, But as a 2D player, I had a hard time figuring out how to properly learn during a match. Because there's no rhyme or reason to strings. You know, someone might have an AK, one character might have an AK, but they might have an AKB, they might have an AKK. It could be a high-low mid, a mid-mid-low. You don't know what the strings are, they're all arbitrary, and it just requires just sheer lab work and building option selects for every single string. And until you get to that point, you can't really play the game from a fundamental standpoint. And that's a little annoying. That's not really a critique, more of just an observation of annoyance for me. I found most of the time I get better at this game, it's because I've labbed a match. I've labbed a matchup, I labbed a character, and now I understand the moves and the frame data and everything. These are all arbitrary fluff things. Now I actually want to talk about the mechanics that kind of irk me. And the first one we're going to talk about is guard damage. Guard damage, for a new player especially, is such a deterrent. Because if, as I said with strings, you don't know the strings, you don't know how to deal with it. So you're going to be blocking a lot. And as you block a lot, you're eventually going to get guard crushed. Which, you know, not the worst thing in the world. Certain characters don't have the most damaging guard crushes, but then you have Talum over there, who I suppose is still my main character, who can take 70% of your life from a guard crush that she can very easily gain access to. And that's a little silly. Generally speaking, when it comes to guard damage, I prefer a deterrent over a inability to partake in a playstyle. It sucks that if you're good at blocking, you can't depend on it in this game a lot. You're much better off dodging and everything. And the higher level you get at this game, the less actual blocking you're going to do. You're going to know the strings. You're going to know how to dodge attacks effectively so that you're not blocking as often. But it's still a shame that it's there, and it's still high. Even in the highest level matches, you can be blinking red in a single round, and it carries over, which is the most perplexing thing to me. Just the fact that it carries over, and if you go into the next round blinking red, it really sucks knowing that I can't block this round. I have to hit him, and that's it. And one of the weird things about this, like, I understand why guard gauge is there, because it can be hard. If you're a character that doesn't have really strong lows, like Talum, for instance, Talum's lows are bad. Well, they're not bad. They're either slow and safe, or fast and weak. So she can't, and her throw game also is below average unless she's back turn. Which, if she's back turn, she's already succeeded in some aspect in the neutral. So Talum gets by doing guard damage, right? Which is fine, but that character's playstyle. She gets people opened up by making them not want to increase their guard gauge, and that's a fun playstyle. I like that option. I just feel like it's a little rampant, and specifically, there's no way to heal your guard damage anymore. GIs don't heal your guard gauge anymore. GIs cost 10%, which I still think is high. I think 8% when it launched was fine. And on a successful GI, it only, does it even go, I think it's 12%? It's be a lot easier if I just set it to GI. Yeah, it just heals like the same 10%. It might be 12%. It's hard to tell because it's already going down. That's not a lot. I wish there was a way to, like, expend meter or something to prevent guard buildup or something. If there was a way to spend meter to do that. The only way to heal guard gauge, and this is the most arbitrary thing, I don't know why, is running forward. Why? What sense does that make? Like, it'd be one thing if it was just like 8-way running decreased it. Like, utilizing movement and evading properly decreased it. That would make sense. But it's not. It's just running forward. And you're never going to be sitting here running forward at something like this for a long time. At best, certain characters, this is a valuable thing to do. Because you can either go low, or you can do a launcher. So Talum will do this. But at best, she's going to be running forward like this long. So she healed like 4%. That's not a lot. So I understand why this mechanic is there, but I don't think it doesn't have an answer, right? Like, you're punishing people who are really good at defending. Or prefer blocking over certain prefer blocking and punishment over, I suppose, evading. And there's no way to heal it. Reversal Edge only burns it more now, which I'm a fan of. I was a huge fan of the Reversal Edge changes. And that's coming from someone who was a Talo main at the time. This bullshit? Not a fan of this bullshit. I still hate that Taloms use this shit. I use it when I play Talon, but very sparingly. So that was a good nerf. And I think it makes sense. I don't dislike the guard gauge. I just think there should be ways to heal guard damage. Which segues into the next thing, which is, why the fuck is just guard in this game? What does this even do? Why is this a thing? It's there, but it doesn't stop guard gauge from building up. It doesn't do anything other than stop chip damage. And I appreciate the fact that they included chip damage in the game, and then they gave you an answer to it in the form of just guarding. But there's so few things that do chip damage that I feel like this mechanic is just drastically underutilized. Personally, what I would do is, there's three things that I would put on, three potential options I would put on just guarding. Because just guarding, I think, is the grand solution to guard damage to make it more reasonable. First solution, first thing you could do is, if you just guard an attack, it decreases the attack level. I think that would be a little broken, because it would completely change frame data and everything, which I'm not a fan of. So I wouldn't do that. I'm just suggesting it's a possibility. Other option, just guarding halves guard damage taken. I'm not even going to say removes. I'm just going to say like halves guard damage taken. Which means if you just guard freaking Songmina's... what is that? What is the notation for that move that does 40%? Whatever. Instead of doing 40% guard damage, it would do 20. That's still a lot, but you just guard it, and it's a risk to do that, because if you miss time to block, I mean, you're kind of fucked. So that's one option, and I think would be a lot... It would bring an incentive to doing just guards, which would potentially almost open you up, because now you're trying to just guard, and then you could miss time your guard, and you get clipped as a result of trying to do so. I think that's neat. And then the third option is just, if you just guard an attack, you can't get guard broken. Like, if you just guard a hit, you can't get guard broken. Which I think would be kind of neat. That way I could... I could just guard that, and I wouldn't get guard broken. Which I think would be a neat mechanic. That would create some clutch moments where you could see someone continuously going for a guard break, and then you keep just guarding it, and they don't get the guard break. Which would be neat. That'd be a fun mechanic. But that's what I would do, and that would solve the whole guard break issue. Where to go next? What do I talk about next? I guess I'll briefly touch on Reversal Edge. Reversal Edge is dumb. Let's be real here. It's a dumb mechanic. I don't know anyone who likes this mechanic. I don't hate it. I hate the RNG bullshit that comes afterwards, but putting a focus stack in the game is fine. And they nerfed it to a certain degree. And they're going to change it in Season 2, we know. But it's just not fun to be put into rock, paper, scissors. That's not fun. It's not engaging. The fact that it has the fact it can be very easily baited is the reason that I don't have an issue with it. It's a baitable tactic. It's just very annoying, and it is very strong. It builds a lot of meter. But yeah, Reversal Edge, it's just bad. Everyone knows it's bad. My brain gripe with it is it's just redundant design. Like, it just steps on the toes of GI. If it was just a focus attack and that was it wouldn't be a problem. But it steps on the toes of GI. I feel like it would be easier for players to just know that they could like hold a GI down, and then the longer you held a GI, the more it ate your guard gauge from like 10%, and then it goes like quickly jumps to like 15, 20, and then it goes from like a green GI to like yellow, orange, and red. And if you GI like a red GI or an orange GI, you're actually negative after you successfully guard impacted them, or something like that, even though you did it successfully. That's like essentially the same mechanic, except it puts you in a post-GI state when you get hit with it. Like, if they successfully hold it down, you're still playing the game, which is something that Soul Calibur VI kind of takes a shitter on, is it takes you out of the game a lot, with a lot of the animations and everything. Really kind of takes you out, which is unfortunate. So, yeah, Reversal Edge, kind of a redundant mechanic, in my opinion. And then I'll briefly talk about meter building in general. The meter system in this game is bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. I don't know why they designed it the way they did. I don't even know why the game has meter, just to be frank. I don't know. I don't know when that was introduced in Soul Calibur, because I only played Soul Calibur 1 and 2 when I was a kid. And that was it. So I don't know how long this has been in Soul Calibur. I think it was 5. I think 5 had supers, but that was it. 2 bars is weird, but it's also just how it builds, right? It builds with running forward. It just seems like they looked at every 2D fighter, and without really thinking about how this meter building in their game should work, they were like, hey, you know what? Let's just add that in. Meter building on whiff, Third Strike has that. Let's put that in. Meter building from running, Guilty Gear's got that. Let's put that in. On block, on hit, by all means, put it in there. Put it in. There's like no rhyme or reason. It's just very silly. It's a I don't want to harp on it that much, but it just seems like they didn't put a lot of thought into it. And why is it 2 bars? I mean, I think 2 bars is excessive. I think there's way too much meter in this game. Look how much meter you generate. And this is after the nerf, man. This is after the nerf. This is like almost a full bar. It's insane. I'm a Third Strike player, man. I'm used to having meter everywhere, but meter in this game is very prevalent. But yeah, meter building, a little crazy, and the way that it's built, I think, is a little weird. And then that brings me to Soul Charge. My most hated mechanic. I hate this mechanic so much. It brings a lot of flashbacks to V-Triggers, because it's very similar. It's not a comeback mechanic unless you build 1 bar of meter for free at the end of on your last round. Then it technically is a comeback mechanic. But it is a mechanic much more suited for comebacks than it is for solidifying a victory, because it's not always max. Because it's defensive first. You get a flash, you push them back. It's a defensive and then offensive move, so that you're pushing them out to neutral. And, you know, you burst them away. And it is a completely fail-safe burst, which is a huge gripe I have. Because one of the reasons that I actually liked playing Soul Calibur is there was generally an answer to every problem. There's certain situations where you're stuck in a force block situation, but for the most part, there's generally a solution. And that's really my biggest complaints, actually, is just lack of solutions. If I know someone's going to soul charge, I can't do anything about it. Doesn't matter how much I know that they're going to soul charge, I can't stop it. So before we talk about soul charge itself and the way that soul charges are designed, let's talk about the activation, the burst portion. So you have the fundamental problem of meter builds really fast. You have 2 bars of meter, which means you can soul charge twice in a round. I've seen people soul charge 3 times in a round. It's crazy how much. The fact that you're seeing soul charge in every single round is insane. Because once soul charge is activated, the entire game plays very differently. It's not like meter and Third Strike. Well, it is. It's like if everyone had Ganagin. That's what it feels like. Only Ganagin now has a burst, a plus on block burst attached to it, which is Just insane. I'm actually trying to imagine that in my head right now, and it's blowing my mind. I don't think soul charges are as strong as Canadian, although they might be. Some of them are. They're not all like Servies, who I think has the most balanced soul charge in the game. But yeah, woof. But the activation. So my personal gripe is the burst, right? It's completely safe on block, on hit, on whiff. You can't GI it, you can't RE it. It's to break attack. Is there a way to make it so you don't stay soul charge on reset? That used to be the case normally, but now I don't know how to make it so you don't. Okay, well, whatever. So on whiff, I can't do anything. Right? See soul charges. I can't do anything. And then I get blown up. I don't know how Talum did that on that recording, but good job, Talum. You helped showcase the point even more. It's like you get a little bit of a mix-up, but it's kind of silly. So if I was going to change soul charge, and I think I sent this in to when they were requesting feedback on the game, I did send this in. A very simple solution that I would do for the burst is make it 2 hits that are very quick succession. The first hit is not a break attack. The second hit is. This means that you couldn't reversal edge it, but you could GI it. Which means that if you knew that someone was going to do a soul charge, and there are lots of situations where it's very wise of you to do a soul charge, now you can bait it. And this is an interesting dynamic because it's, if you're someone who is on the defensive, you want a soul charge, you know you probably should, but you know they can GI it. If you're a very patient player and like the solid play is just to block it out, soul charging, again, it doesn't really carry a risk, but in this instance, if it did carry a risk, suddenly now you're in a situation where it's like, okay, no, I'm just gonna play solid, I'm just gonna block it out. And then they GI in front of you. Because for the greed, there's your door. You're out of the pressure now. And now you get the offensive. That's just an interesting offensive and defensive game. Just added on. That's way more interesting, to me anyway, than just, you're on top of me, get away. That's not fun. And the problem with this is, and this I noticed this a lot when I was playing Talum, this distance that this burst puts you at is much more advantageous for certain characters than others. Like Ivy, this is ideal range. Talum, not ideal range. Using Talum's soul charge is a pain. You always want to plant them. If you don't plant them, you don't get shit. Now, Season 2 is going to make it so you can activate soul charge without doing this, which will be, I don't know if that's going to be better or worse, but it's definitely interesting. I'm interested to see what they'll do. So that's the activation. That's what I would change. Not a huge change. Now, if I had my way, I would also decrease the size and active frames of the burst. Some of the active frames in these bursts they linger for so long. I would decrease the radius and decrease the active frames, but just the bare minimum change of making it so you could GI it would do wonders. Now there's a solution. Infinitely much less annoying as a mechanic. I hate knowing that there's nothing I can do. That's just a horrible feeling. And then beyond that is just the fact that, boy, Soul Charge, it's really strong. It's really strong. It's a very strong mechanic. Servi's Soul Charge, I think, is the most balanced one in the game. He doesn't really get anything that's particularly cheap. Like, it's a lot of damage, but that was also very linear. And you can just step that shit. He just really is just incredibly balanced in his soul charge. And Talum's, I actually think, is fairly balanced. It's one of the things I like about Talum's is that she doesn't really gain anything new. She does now. They did give her 6-6B being a mid, which is honestly, it's actually pretty decent. I don't know why they gave it to her, but because her soul charge is meh. But one of the reasons that I don't mind her soul charge is the cheapest thing, in my opinion, the cheapest thing in Talum's soul charge is this. The fact that is a break attack. Which means if you block the first A, you're stuck. You're stuck in this. You have to just block this out. Which means she can just keep doing this. Forever. Oh, that was weird. That's Soul Calibur for you. That's Soul Calibur for you right there. That's the cheapest thing. And this is the biggest problem with Soul Charge as a whole for me, is everything becomes a break attack. And this is where the issue of guard damage and everything like that comes into play. Like, look at Song Mina as, like, the greatest example. Everything is now a sweeping mid that's plus on block, does a lot of guard damage, and you just have to constantly be guessing, which is not that interesting. It's not that interesting to be guessing all the time. It's just not. It's just not interesting. I don't know why they made it a thing. And that's my biggest gripe with Soul Charge. It's just everything's a break attack, man. At least let me GI it. You're gonna do like 50% of my life if it hits. You know? Do I really need... Good job. Do I really need all this fucking shit? Like, Soul Charge is already so strong. Why make it so that you can't do, you can't just actually block it? So one of the reasons that I don't mind Tullum's Soul Charge is that she's basically the same character, and she's still unsafe. Like, this mix-up off of this, it's still unsafe. Oops. I'm a Tullum main. How negative is this? I don't fight that many Tullums. What? Am I mistaken? No, that is unsafe. Yeah, it's like -14. And more to the point, you can also just block it. And at the same time, it's not a break attack. It's not a break attack, so you can still... Oops. This mix-up is just beaten by a GI. And if she goes the other way, it doesn't matter. It still works. She has to bait the GI. It's not like it's a break now and you can't deal with it. That's fine. She's just a stronger character. BKA, again, dealt with the exact same way. It's not a new mix-up. You block it low. This is what you do with BK. I cannot get slide inputs while recording. But yeah, it's just, I don't like Soul Charge. It's just so prominent, right? It's just a combination of everything. So you have guard damage that continues through rounds, that builds pretty fast. Certain attacks do upwards of like 20-50% of your guard gauge. Meter builds very fast. Soul Charge can be done on like a round-by-round basis, and Soul Charge can absolutely win games. And you can't block out a Soul Charge, because then it's going to increase your guard damage, which is eventually going to cause you to get a break, which is going to do another 50% of your life. And then it just starts all over again. It's just a combination of all of these mechanical design decisions that just lead to a frustrating experience at times. So I think if Soul Charge was more rare, if there wasn't 2 stocks of meter, if meter built more slowly, if guard damage was more capable of being healed, there were ways to prevent a break. One solution along these little solutions along the line here would make the entire flow of this game way better. For me, anyway. And I think that's mostly the end of the thoughts. I think that's it. I've been wanting to rant about this for a while. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I do think the game is fun. I do think it's still very fun and competitive. I just think Soul Charge is a black stain. And Reversal Edge is a stain, but everyone hates Reversal Edge. That's fine. We all know that. We all know that mechanic sucks. But it's baitable. You're able to play around it. It was a terrible addition for new players, which is why they put it in the game. And what did you see in low-level play? Just a bunch of people doing Reversal Edge, and they didn't know how to deal with it. Everyone left because that mechanic was trash. But yeah, Soul Calibur is such a fun game. I love watching it. But boy, I just wish I loved playing it as much as I love watching it. Because here's hoping Season 2 fixes problems. I don't know if it will. Being able to activate Soul Charge with an attack, that's potentially... I mean, that's snowbally. But Soul Charge is so strong, if you could just go right into it... Ugh. It could potentially be good, it could potentially be awful. Depends on what else they do. I am curious to see. Until then. Also, yay Hilda.